My mother accused me that my brother slept with my fiancée and got her pregnant, and then she demanded that I take care of everything. And then You ever feel like life is perfect one day, and then someone comes along and rips the rug out from under you? That was me just a few weeks ago. My name's Landon, I'm 26, and up until recently, I thought I was doing everything right. I had a stable job, a great apartment, and I was engaged to Sienna, the love of my life. We'd been together for almost 4 years. She was smart, beautiful, and had this infectious laugh that could light up the worst day. I was so sure that we were going to build a life together, until everything blew up in my face. It started with a weird phone call. I was at work when I got a text from Ethan, my 22-year-old brother. Hey, need to talk. It's serious. I hadn't heard from Ethan in days. He was the golden boy in my mom's eyes, but to me, he was trouble. He was always bouncing between jobs, partying, and finding ways to get himself into stupid situations. Still, he was my brother, so I called him back. Yeah, what's up? I asked as I stepped outside to get some air. Ethan's voice was shaky. Landon, I have to tell you something. It's about Sienna. I froze. What about her? There was a long pause before he finally said it. I slept with her. She's pregnant. It's mine. I swear the world stopped spinning. I don't even remember hanging up the phone. All I know is that I ended up standing in my kitchen an hour later, staring at the wall, just replaying what I'd heard over and over. It didn't make sense. How could my brother, Ethan, of all people, do something like this to me? And Sienna? The woman who was supposed to be my future? I felt sick. The next thing I knew, I was on the way to our apartment. I needed answers. When I opened the door, Sienna was sitting on the couch scrolling through her phone like nothing had happened. She looked up and smiled. Hey babe, you're home early. I didn't even wait. Is it true? My voice came out sharp. Did you sleep with Ethan? Her face went pale. She put her phone down and stared at me like a deer in headlights. What? You heard me. I stepped closer, hands shaking. Ethan told me everything. You, him, the pregnancy. So tell me, is it true? She started crying immediately, which almost made me angrier. Landon, please let me explain. Explain? I laughed bitterly. Explain how you slept with my brother? The one person I told you not to trust? Did you think I wouldn't find out? She broke down sobbing, covering her face with her hands. It was a mistake. I didn't mean for it to happen. It just did. You didn't mean for it to happen? My voice cracked as I said it. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. And what about the pregnancy? Is it his? Her silence was enough of an answer. At that point, I just walked out. I couldn't look at her. I couldn't even think. I got in my car and drove aimlessly for hours until my phone started blowing up. Missed calls, texts. My mom, of all people, was calling me repeatedly. I finally picked up, and I kid you not, the first thing she said was, Landon, this is your fault. I almost swerved off the road. Excuse me? Listen to me, my mom, Madison, or Maddie as everyone called her, snapped. You've been neglecting your relationship. Sienna is young and confused. You need to step up and fix this. Fix this? I shouted into the phone. You're blaming me for my brother knocking up my fiancée? Don't yell at me, she shot back. Ethan told me everything. He feels terrible. And Sienna, well, she's in a fragile state right now. She's pregnant. You need to take responsibility and help figure this out like an adult. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. It was like I was living in some kind of twisted nightmare. I parked in an empty lot and sat there in silence. My hands were shaking so hard that I had to grip the steering wheel just to steady myself. It wasn't enough that Sienna had betrayed me. Now my mom, my own mother, was siding with Ethan, demanding I take care of the mess they made. The more I thought about it, the angrier I got. Ethan had always been Maddie's favorite. When we were kids, I was the one who had to be perfect, while Ethan got away with everything. If I messed up, I'd get lectured for hours. If Ethan screwed up, Maddie would shrug and say, boys will be boys. But this was beyond anything I could have imagined. The next day, I decided I needed answers from Ethan face to face. I drove to my mom's house, where Ethan was still living. When I walked in, Maddie was sitting at the kitchen table, sipping coffee like nothing had happened. She barely looked up as I stormed past her and into the living room, where Ethan was sprawled out on the couch watching TV. "Ethan," I growled. "We need to talk." He looked up at me, all casual, like he wasn't the reason my life had fallen apart. "What's up? What's up? Are you serious?" I stepped closer, fists clenched. "You slept with Sienna. You got her pregnant. And you have the nerve to act like this is normal?" Ethan sighed and rubbed the back of his neck. "Look, man, I didn't mean for it to happen. She came to me first." "Oh, don't you dare put this on her," I snapped. "You're my brother. You knew what you were doing." "Guys, stop it." Maddie's voice interrupted from the kitchen. "Landon, calm down. Ethan made a mistake, but we need to think about the baby now." I turned to her, stunned. "Asterisk the baby? Asterisk, are you serious, Mom? He destroyed my relationship, and all you care about is his kid. That's enough." Maddie's voice was sharp. "You need to let this go. Sienna is still a part of this family, and so is the baby. You're the oldest, Landon. It's your job to help your brother through this." I stared at her, barely able to process what she'd said. My family, the people I thought I could rely on, had just sided with the person who tore my life apart. I felt betrayed, angry, and alone. I didn't know what to do next, but one thing was clear. I couldn't trust anyone. I didn't sleep that night. I lay on my bed staring at the ceiling, replaying the whole mess over and over. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Sienna's face when she admitted the pregnancy was Ethan's. I saw Ethan sitting on the couch like nothing had happened. And worst of all, I heard my mom's voice. "Asterisk, you need to let this go." Asterisk, let it go? How do you just let go of something like this? The next morning, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Sienna. Asterisk, please, can we talk? Asterisk. I nearly threw my phone across the room. Instead, I blocked her number. I wasn't ready to talk to her, and honestly, I didn't know if I ever would be. But just when I thought I was done dealing with everyone, Grace showed up at my apartment. Grace has been my best friend since college. She's one of those people who sees through all the BS and tells you the truth, whether you want to hear it or not. She didn't even knock. She just let herself in and stood there in her ripped jeans and oversized hoodie, holding 2 coffees. "You look like hell," she said, handing me one. "Thanks," I muttered, taking a sip. She sat down on the couch and stared at me. "So are you going to tell me what happened? Or do I have to drag it out of you?" I sighed, sank into the chair across from her, and told her everything. About Ethan, about Sienna, about my mom blaming me. By the time I was done, my voice was shaking, and my hands were balled into fists. Grace looked furious. "Are you kidding me? Your brother and your mom are treating you like you're the bad guy here? What kind of twisted logic is that?" "Welcome to my family," I said bitterly. She leaned forward, her dark eyes sharp. "Landon, you don't owe any of them anything. I know it's hard, but you need to stop letting them push you around." "What am I supposed to do?" I shot back. "My mom's already making me out to be the villain. Ethan's walking around like he's a saint, and Sienna." I stopped, my throat tight. "I just don't know what to do." Grace was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Leave." I blinked at her. "What?" "Get out of this mess. Walk away. You don't owe Ethan or Sienna forgiveness. You don't owe your mom an explanation. You can't fix this, Landon, and you shouldn't have to." Her words hit me hard because deep down, I knew she was right. But walking away from your family, even when they're toxic, isn't that simple. Later that day, I decided to face Sienna one last time. I needed to hear the truth from her, without my mom or Ethan in my ear. I texted her to meet me at a small coffee shop we used to go to all the time. I don't know why I picked that place. Maybe part of me wanted to remind her of what we'd lost. When I walked in, Sienna was already sitting at a table by the window, fidgeting with her hands. She looked up when I approached, her eyes red and swollen. "Landon," she started, but I held up a hand. "Don't," I said as I sat down. "Just tell me why." She swallowed hard. "I don't know. It just happened." I laughed bitterly. You don't know? That's all you've got. Her face crumbled. I was lonely, okay? You were always busy with work, and Ethan. He was there. He listened. I didn't mean for it to go this far. You didn't mean to betray me? Sleep with my brother? Get pregnant? My voice rose, and people started looking at us, but I didn't care. What did you think was going to happen, Sienna? That I'd just forgive you and raise Ethan's kid like it's my own? Tears streamed down her face, and she whispered, I'm sorry. Sorry doesn't fix this, I said quietly. It doesn't undo the fact that you destroyed us. She stared at me, and for the first time, I saw something that looked like guilt. I don't expect you to forgive me, Landon. I don't know what to do. For a split second, I almost felt bad for her. Almost. But then I remembered that she'd chosen this. She'd chosen Ethan. I stood up and said, You're not my problem anymore. And then I walked out. That night, I got a call from my mom. I let it go to voicemail, but when I listened to it, her words made my blood boil. Asterisk, Landon. This is getting ridiculous. Ethan is trying his best to take responsibility, and Sienna's struggling. You need to stop being so selfish and help us figure this out. Call me back. Asterisk. Selfish? Me? I'd been betrayed, humiliated, and abandoned, and somehow I was the selfish one. I didn't call her back. Instead, I texted Grace. Asterisk, you were right. I can't do this anymore. Asterisk. She responded immediately. Asterisk, good. Come over. We'll figure this out together. Asterisk. I grabbed my keys and drove to her place. When I got there, she was waiting for me with a bottle of whiskey and 2 glasses. Sit, she said. Drink. I collapsed onto her couch and took a long sip. Grace sat beside me, watching me carefully. So what's the plan? I don't know, I admitted. My family's a mess. I feel like I don't even know who I am anymore. She shook her head. Landon, you've spent your whole life cleaning up after Ethan and letting your mom guilt you into taking responsibility for things that aren't your fault. It's time to stop. I looked at her. And do what? Live your life for you, she said firmly. Cut them out if you have to. Focus on yourself. Her words hit me like a brick. Cutting off my family felt impossible. They were my family, after all. But what had they ever really done for me? My mom had always coddled Ethan and treated me like I was the backup son. Ethan had betrayed me in the worst way possible. And Sienna, I couldn't even think about her anymore. Grace poured another drink and said, You're stronger than you think, Landon. You just need to believe it. For the first time in days, I felt like maybe, just maybe, she was right. The next week was a blur of avoidance and anger. I stopped answering my mom's calls, blocked Ethan, and completely cut Sienna out. I buried myself in work. Long hours, skipped meals, anything to stop thinking about what they'd done to me. I didn't know where I stood in life anymore. Every part of my identity felt shattered, like I didn't even know who I was without Sienna or my family's expectations pulling me in 1,000 directions. One night, as I sat at my desk trying to focus on a meaningless spreadsheet, my phone buzzed. It was a number I didn't recognize. Ryan, Sienna's best friend. I hadn't spoken to him in months, but we used to hang out in groups back when things were normal. Asterisk, hey Landon, I know this is out of the blue, but can we talk? I think you need to hear something. Asterisk. At first, I wanted to ignore him. I'd had enough talks to last a lifetime, but something told me to call him back. I didn't trust him. He was always too close to Sienna, but curiosity won out. When I called, Ryan's voice was calm but serious. Look, man, I don't want to get in the middle of this, but there's something you don't know about Sienna and Ethan. What is it? I snapped, already feeling my stomach tighten. It's not just about the pregnancy, he said carefully. Sienna didn't tell you the whole story. She's been hiding something. I sat up straighter. What are you talking about? Ryan hesitated. I don't know if I should be the one to say this, but Ethan's been manipulating her. For months. He's not as innocent in this as he's making it sound. I froze. What do you mean, manipulating? Ethan's been bragging about getting back at you. I don't know what his deal is, but this thing with Sienna, he planned it. At least, that's what he told a couple of people. He wanted to hurt you, Landon. My blood turned to ice. I gripped the phone so hard my knuckles ached. He what? I'm serious, Ryan said. I don't think Sienna even realized what was happening at first. Ethan's been in her ear for months, telling her you didn't care, that you were probably cheating on her. He turned her against you. Look, man, I'm not saying Sienna's innocent. She's got her own mess to answer for, but Ethan? He's been playing this whole thing like some kind of game. My chest tightened, and I felt like I couldn't breathe. This was worse than I'd imagined. Ethan hadn't just betrayed me. He'd planned it. Deliberately. And Sienna had been stupid enough to fall for it. Why are you telling me this? I asked Ryan, my voice shaking. Because you deserve to know, he said simply. I know this doesn't fix anything, but you're not crazy for feeling like something's off. Ethan's been messing with you, Landon. I thought you should hear it from someone who doesn't have an agenda. I hung up and sat there for what felt like hours, staring at the wall. Ethan had always been jealous of me, but I'd brushed it off as sibling rivalry. I never imagined he'd take it this far. The next day, I called Grace and told her everything Ryan had said. She didn't look surprised. I knew it, she muttered, pacing back and forth in my living room. Your brother's always been shady, but this is a whole new level of messed up. What am I supposed to do? I asked. I can't just let him get away with this. You're not going to, she said firmly. But you can't play his game, Landon. He wants you angry. He wants you broken. Don't give him the satisfaction. She was right, but knowing the truth made my blood boil. I couldn't stand the idea of Ethan sitting back, smug, while I picked up the pieces of my life. I needed answers, and I needed to hear them from him. That night, I drove back to my mom's house. She wasn't home, but Ethan's car was in the driveway. Perfect. I let myself in, and there he was, sprawled out on the couch like a king, scrolling through his phone. The sight of him made my skin crawl. Landon, he said when he saw me. What are you doing here? I slammed the door behind me. We need to talk. He smirked. Oh, here we go. What now? I stepped closer, fists clenched. You planned this, didn't you? Ethan's face froze for a split second before he recovered. What the hell are you talking about? Don't play dumb, I snapped. I know you've been feeding Sienna lies, telling her I didn't care, that I was cheating on her. You set this whole thing up because you're jealous of me. He stood up, and for the first time, I saw something ugly flash in his eyes. So what if I did? He sneered. You think you're better than me, Landon? You've always been the perfect son, the golden boy. Everyone loves you. You get everything handed to you while I'm stuck being the screw-up. That's not my fault, Ethan. I shouted. I never asked to be the golden boy. I worked my ass off for everything I have. You can't blame me because Mom coddles you. He laughed bitterly. You don't get it, do you? Sienna didn't want you, Landon. She came to me. She chose me. I snapped. I don't remember throwing the first punch, but suddenly we were on the ground, fists flying, shouting like animals. Years of resentment and anger boiled over in that moment. I didn't care if I hurt him. I wanted him to feel the pain he'd caused me. Eventually, I heard my mom's voice screaming at us. Stop it. Stop it right now. She yanked me back, and Ethan wiped blood from his lip, grinning like he'd won. Get out, Landon. My mom spat. You're out of control. I looked at her, stunned. Are you kidding me? He's the one who... I don't care, she snapped. You're making everything worse. Just leave. I couldn't believe it. My own mother had just kicked me out for defending myself against the brother who destroyed my life. I turned to Ethan, who was still grinning like a snake. You'll regret this, I said, my voice low. I promise you. And then I left. When I got back to my apartment, Grace was waiting for me. I didn't even ask how she got in. She took one look at me, bloodied, bruised, and furious, and said, What happened? I told her everything. By the time I was done, she was pacing again, muttering under her breath. That's it. We're not letting him get away with this. What do you mean, we? I asked. She looked at me with fire in her eyes. You're not alone in this, Landon. Your brother's a manipulative sociopath, and I'll be damned if I let him win. We're going to expose him for who he really is. How? Grace smirked. Leave that to me. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I had a glimmer of hope. I didn't know what Grace was planning, but I trusted her. And I knew one thing for sure. This wasn't over. For the next few days, Grace went full detective mode. She had always been resourceful, probably because she worked in marketing and knew how to dig up information on people for campaigns. But this time, she had a personal vendetta. She wasn't just doing this for me. She genuinely hated Ethan and everything he stood for. She sat across from me in my living room one evening, her laptop open, furiously typing away. "Ethan's sloppy," she muttered. "Guys like him always are. They think they're smarter than everyone else, but they leave breadcrumbs. I'll find something." I didn't ask her how she planned to do it. Grace had this look in her eyes, the kind that said, "Don't question me. I've got this." So I left her to it, pacing nervously in the corner of the room. Hours later, she slammed the laptop shut and grinned. "Got him." I turned, my heart racing. "What do you mean?" She pushed the laptop toward me. "Ethan's been running his mouth to his friends, bragging about how he won. How he ruined your life just because he could. He's been texting this guy named Derek, someone he parties with, about how he manipulated Sienna. And the best part? Derek was dumb enough to screenshot everything and share it in some group chat." I stared at the screen, reading through the messages. "Ethan, asterisk told you it would work. Landon thinks I'm the problem. Guy's so gullible, asterisk. Derek, damn bro, she really fell for it. Ethan, asterisk easy. I told her Landon didn't care. He'd probably leave her soon anyway. Pushed her until she came to me. Couldn't resist, asterisk. Derek, asterisk, and now she's pregnant? LMAO, dude, you're wild, asterisk. Ethan, asterisk, yeah, it's perfect. He'll never look at her the same. He's done. I win, asterisk. My hands started shaking. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. It wasn't just betrayal anymore. It was calculated. Ethan had spent months orchestrating this, feeding Sienna lies, pushing her to doubt me, until he broke us. And now he was bragging about it like it was some kind of game. Grace watched me carefully. "You okay?" I looked up at her, my voice cold. "No, but I know what I'm going to do." The next morning, I called Sienna and told her I needed to see her. She was hesitant, understandable. Since the last time we spoke, I'd basically walked out on her. But she agreed to meet me at a park near her apartment. When I arrived, she was sitting on a bench, looking tired and worn down. She'd lost weight since I last saw her, and there were dark circles under her eyes. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. "Landon," she said softly as I sat down beside her. "I didn't think I'd hear from you again." "I found out the truth," I said, getting straight to the point. "About Ethan. About everything." Her brow furrowed. "What do you mean?" I handed her a printout of the messages Grace had found. She hesitated before taking it, but as she read through them, her face turned pale. Her hand flew to her mouth. "Oh my God," she whispered. Tears filled her eyes as she looked at me. He lied to me." "Yeah," I said bitterly. "He played you. Just like he played me." Sienna shook her head, her whole body trembling. "I'm so sorry, Landon. I didn't know. I thought you didn't love me anymore. He told me you were pulling away, that you were seeing someone else." She stopped, unable to finish. I wanted to scream at her. How could she have been so blind? How could she let Ethan manipulate her so easily? But instead, I took a deep breath and said, "You made your choice, Sienna, and now you have to live with it." She looked at me, tears streaming down her face. "What are you going to do?" "I don't know yet," I admitted. "But I'm done letting Ethan or my mom control me." Sienna nodded slowly. "If you want me to tell your mom the truth, I will. About what Ethan did. About how he manipulated everything." "Don't worry about it," I said. "I'll handle it." That afternoon, I went back to my mom's house. I knew what I was walking into. Maddie would defend Ethan no matter what, but I didn't care. I was done playing the dutiful son. When I walked in, Maddie was in the kitchen, stirring a pot of something on the stove. She looked up and frowned. "What are you doing here, Landon?" "We need to talk," I said, my voice steady. She sighed. "If this is about Ethan again." "It's not just about Ethan," I interrupted, slamming the printouts onto the counter. "Read this." She gave me a look but picked up the papers. As she read, her face turned stony. Where did you get this? Does it matter? I snapped. Ethan's been bragging about how he manipulated Sienna, how he set this whole thing up to ruin me. And you defended him. You called me selfish. You kicked me out of this house for standing up for myself, and all the while, this is the son you've been protecting. She put the papers down, her expression unreadable. Ethan wouldn't do this. He already did, I said, my voice rising. It's right there in black and white. He ruined my relationship because he's jealous of me. He's been lying to you, Mom, and you've been letting him. Before Maddie could respond, the front door opened and Ethan walked in. He froze when he saw me. What's he doing here? Ethan asked, his tone annoyed. I turned to face him, anger bubbling just beneath the surface. Tell her, Ethan. Tell her what you did. Ethan's face twisted into a smirk. I don't know what you're talking about. Stop lying, I shouted, slamming my fist on the counter. I know everything. About the texts. About how you pushed Sienna to doubt me. About how you've been bragging to your friends that you won. Maddie turned to Ethan, holding up the papers. Is this true? Ethan's confidence faltered for a split second, but then he recovered. Landon's lying. This isn't real. It's real, I said coldly, and you know it. For once, Maddie didn't jump to his defense. She looked between the two of us, her face pale. Ethan? He didn't say anything. I can't believe you, Maddie whispered. She turned to me, her voice soft. Landon, I didn't know. You didn't want to know, I said, my voice cracking. You've always let him get away with everything. But this is unforgivable. Ethan finally snapped. So what? You're still pathetic, Landon. You let a girl ruin you. I just gave you the push you needed to see how weak you really are. I stepped toward him, my fists clenched, but Maddie grabbed my arm. Stop, she said, her voice shaking. She looked at Ethan with tears in her eyes. Get out. Ethan's smirk dropped. What? You heard me, Maddie said. Get out of my house. Ethan stared at her, stunned. You're taking his side? After everything I've done for you? Get out, she repeated, her voice firm. For the first time, I saw fear in Ethan's eyes. He stormed out, slamming the door behind him. I turned to Maddie, but I didn't feel any satisfaction. I just felt tired. I'm sorry, Landon, she whispered. Don't, I said. It's too late for that. And then I walked out, leaving her alone in the house she'd let Ethan destroy. I didn't go back to my apartment right away after leaving my mom's house. I needed to clear my head, so I just drove. The sun was setting, casting orange and purple streaks across the sky. It should have been beautiful, peaceful, but all I felt was empty. Ethan was out of the house now, and my mom had finally seen who he was, but it didn't feel like a victory. Nothing about this situation felt like a win. I ended up at Grace's place, as I always did when I had nowhere else to turn. She opened the door before I could even knock. You look like you've been through hell. I feel like it, I muttered as I stepped inside. She handed me a beer without asking and motioned for me to sit. I sank into her couch and rubbed my face, exhaustion hitting me all at once. Grace sat across from me, watching carefully, waiting for me to speak. Ethan's out, I finally said. Mom kicked him out after I showed her the messages. Grace raised an eyebrow. Seriously? I didn't think she'd ever stand up to him. Neither did I admitted. But it doesn't fix anything. Why not? She asked. He's gone. Sienna knows the truth. Your mom can't ignore what he did anymore. That sounds like progress to me. I sighed. It doesn't matter. I still lost everything. My relationship. My family. I can't trust anyone anymore. Grace leaned forward, her expression softening. Landon, you didn't lose everything. You lost people who didn't deserve you. That's not the same thing. I stared at her for a moment, trying to process what she was saying. Maybe she was right. Maybe this whole mess had finally shown me who the people in my life really were. Ethan was poison. My mom had let me down. And Sienna, she'd made her choice. I couldn't change any of that, but I could decide where I went from here. What now? I asked quietly, more to myself than to her. Grace smiled faintly. Now you start over. You do something for yourself for once. Stop living for other people's approval. Stop cleaning up their messes. Her words stuck with me. For so long, I'd been the responsible one, the son who had to fix things, hold the family together. But what had that gotten me? Nothing but heartache. I took a deep breath. You're right. Of course I am, she said with a grin. I'm always right. The next day, I made a plan. It wasn't some grand scheme to get revenge or force my family to see my side of things. I was done with all of that. I just wanted my life back, the life that I wanted, not the one other people expected me to have. First, I called my mom. I wasn't looking for an apology anymore. I didn't need one. I just needed closure. When she picked up, her voice was hesitant. Landon, I just wanted to say that I'm done, I said calmly. I'm done fixing everyone else's problems. I'm done being the perfect son. If you can't see that Ethan brought this on himself, that's on you. But I'm not letting this destroy me. Landon, please, she started. But I cut her off. I love you, Mom, but I can't be part of this anymore. I hope you figure things out with Ethan, but I'm not going to keep setting myself on fire to keep everyone else warm. And then I hung up. It was the hardest thing I'd ever done. But as soon as the call ended, I felt lighter. Free. Almost. Over the next few weeks, I focused on rebuilding my life. I went to therapy, not because I was broken, but because I wanted to understand why I'd spent so long letting other people walk all over me. I threw myself into my work, not as a distraction, but because I actually enjoyed it. I reconnected with old friends I'd neglected over the years, including Grace, who'd somehow become my rock through all of this. One day, as we sat on her balcony sharing a pizza, Grace looked at me and said, You seem happy? I raised an eyebrow. Do I? Yeah, she said with a smile. Like, for the first time in a long time, you're actually living. I thought about that. She was right. I wasn't tied down by Sienna's betrayal, my mom's guilt trips, or Ethan's manipulations anymore. I was living my life on my terms. Thanks to you, I said, nudging her playfully. She rolled her eyes. I just reminded you of what you already knew. You did the hard part yourself. Maybe she was right, but I still owed her more than I could say. I looked at her then, really looked at her, and realized how much she'd been there for me. How much she'd always been there for me. I said slowly, I don't say this enough, but I don't know where I'd be without you. Grace smirked, though her cheeks turned a little pink. Probably crying into a pint of ice cream somewhere. Probably, I agreed with a laugh. But seriously, thank you. She gave me a soft look and nodded. Anytime, Landon. Anytime. A month later, I heard through a mutual friend that Sienna had decided to move back to her parents' house. Ethan, on the other hand, had completely disappeared. No one had seen or heard from him since the day my mom kicked him out. I didn't care where he was. He was out of my life, and that's all that mattered. One night, out of the blue, Sienna sent me a message on Facebook. It was short and simple. I'm sorry for everything. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I hope you find happiness. You deserve it. I stared at it for a long time before finally responding. I hope you do too. That was it. I didn't hate her anymore. I didn't feel anything, really. She was just a part of my past, and I was finally ready to let go of all of it. A few weeks later, I got a promotion at work, something I never would have seen coming back when my life was in shambles. I celebrated with Grace and a couple of friends, sitting on my balcony and drinking cheap wine out of plastic cups. At one point, as everyone laughed about something ridiculous, Grace turned to me and said, You really made it through, didn't you? I smiled, genuinely happy for the first time in months. Yeah, I said. I did, and I meant it. For so long, I'd let other people control my life. Ethan's jealousy, Sienna's betrayal, my mom's guilt trips. But in the end, I came out stronger. I walked through the fire and found myself on the other side. And for the first time in years, I knew I was exactly where I was supposed to be.